Howdy. Welcome back to Dion Talk. Rent control passed in Washington state. What does that mean for me as a landlord, and what might that mean for you as a tenant? This is going to be a nice short live that I'm doing on my phone where I won't be able to see the comments until after the video, and I will reply to all of them. If you want your questions answered during a live stream every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific, I do a live stream that basically lasts as long as the questions do. So what I want to do is explain how rent control impacts landlords and why I invest in a blue state. So rent control sounds like they want to control rents. So tenants think it's good for them. Most landlords don't like overregulation and they see rent control as a negative. But let me explain to you why for me, maybe it isn't. When they proposed it in 2024, I reached out to legislators and explained what I'm about to explain in this video, and it didn't even make it out of committee. In 2025, I sat back and I let greed take over, and I didn't reach out. And I let all of the tenants go and give their sad stories on why rent control was needed. So in Washington state, I own 8 rental properties with 18 rental units, and I'm house hacking one of them. So I have 17 properties or units rented out. Most of my properties, we will say rent for $2,000. Now this is the 2-bedroom rentals. Most of my 3-bedroom rentals get significantly more than this, right? Section 8 will pay $3,000 or $3,500 depending on how many bedrooms you have. I only have about 1/3 of my properties with Section 8. The rest are either military or working or retired. So just an average 2-bedroom at $2,000, that's below average. If you go on Zillow, apartments.com, Craigslist, you'll see that most 2-bedrooms in the counties where I invest are rented for $2,400 or $2,500. I'm a bit below area average because I don't have fancy rentals. I have Class C working class properties, and I keep my rents below the area average so that I don't have high tenant turnover. Happy tenants don't trash your property, and happy tenants don't leave. So this is my goal. So in 2025, I sent an email to all of my tenants saying, my intention in 2025 is to not do a rent increase. From 2013 to 2022, what I did was 5% every other year. I would use my binder strategy to get the rents where I want them, and there's plenty of videos on YouTube about the binder strategy. But 5% every other year worked for me most years. Because if we have something like a pandemic, an eviction moratorium, and our stock market crash, or insurance rates triple, or Washington passes another law that triples the possible property taxes, I could make a larger adjustment sometime when I needed to. So my plan was the tenants that are at $2,000 in 2025 would stay at $2,000. The rest of the email said, unless rent control passes. Now, when it was proposed, I think it was a 7% cap, then it went to a 10% cap, and now what it ended up being is a 7% annual cap on increase plus inflation with a maximum limit of 10%. So my email said, your rent increase for 2025, if rent control passes, will be 7%. I'm not even going to be the greedy landlord that goes 7% plus inflation. I just let them know in advance the rent increase for 2025 for all my tenants who are currently at $2,000 or an average thereof is going to go up 7% to $2,140. I'm still far below area average, which is 23, 24, and because of rent control, the area average is going to go up because every time a landlord has a tenant turnover or a vacant unit, they're not going to be in a hurry to fill it. They're not going to take a low rent and be forced to only let it go up 7 to 10% every year. They're going to put the rents as high as they can with their shiny new rehabbed unit and even leave it empty for a few months until they find the right tenant willing to pay that much because no other units were available. So let's take it down. This is the first year of an increase to my income because of rent control that wasn't planned. We're going to do 2026, and I apologize for writing on the board. Left-handed people get the short straw when we do this. But in 2026, my plan was 5% every other year, meaning next year my rent would go to $2,100. That is 5% increase of $2,000. So here I make $2,100, and in 2026, because of compounding prices, that 7%, again, not even taking the inflation increase, just taking the 7%, is going to make my $2,000 a month in 2025 go up $100 next year. My $2,140 this year go up to $2,289. So in 2 years of increases, I'm still not to where the area average was in 2025. It's 300 or 400 when I'm at 2,000 above me. I'm not even caught up yet in 2 years, but I've got my rent increase. I have to do at least 7% a year because I can't do a larger adjustment if if insurance prices triple, or if property taxes triple, or if tariffs go in and the cost of materials goes up, or if the cost of labor goes up. I have to do this increase. And every time I say this, and I'm going to use a very technical term, idiot says, well, you can't raise your rents too much, your tenants will just move out. Well, if the average was 23 or 24 when I started, and I'm not even there in 2 years, where do you think they're going to go after 2 years of rent increases to the average? So I still have tenants below the area average who are happy, even though they're getting a forced increase because of rent control. Let's take it one more year, and this is the last year I'm going to do. I'm doing the whiteboard because I'm not a math fan. You don't need to know any of this to own rental properties, and you should know some of this if you're a tenant. But in 2027, I do 5% every other year. So no increase in 2025, no increase in 2027. So in 2027, my tenants would be paying $2,100 without rent control. In 2028, it would go up 5%, which would be something like another $110. But in 2027, because of compounding math, this $2,289 goes up 7% to $2,449. So now, 3 years of increases finally gets me to where the area average when I started. But the area average went up exponentially every year because landlords know they're now bound by rent control. So every time they have a tenant turnover or build a unit or have a unit that they purchase vacant and go to fill, they're going to push the rents up super high because they know once they have a tenant locked in, they're locked into this 7 to 10%. So the area average here is going to be much higher than what I'm at. So again, my tenants won't move out because moving out to anywhere else is probably going to be $2,800, $2,900, or $3,000 for a 2-bedroom after 3 years of rent control. So what does this look like for me in 2027? I would be getting $2,100, but because of rent control, thank you Democrats, I'm going to be getting $2,449, even though I didn't take the increase of also adding inflation that the bill allowed me to do. So in 2027, I'm going to get $350 more dollars per month per unit. I have 17 rentals. So 350 times 17 means 5,950. 5,000, get this straight, $950. Sounds like a lot, right? That's per month. Now let's times that by 12 to give me my year. In the year 2027, because of a bill that passed in 2025, I'm going to make $71,000 more than I would make if there wasn't rent control. I'm also going to make $38,000 in 2026, and I'm going to make $28,000 in 2025. So this bill that passes in 2025, this sucks to say, because I'm going to make $138,000 more in rents profit than I would if there was no rent control. Now let's flip that around. My tenants, the people whose rent I try to keep below area average, who set their own rents when I use the binder strategy, whose wages are not going up 7 to 10% a year. Because of this bill, my tenants are going to be forced to pay me $138,000 more than they would have if this stupid bill didn't pass. So thank you, Democrats, for never overlooking anything and never looking at the history of what happened to rents in every single city that's ever had them. They push up the maximum allowable amount. And everyone says, well, eventually you'll be charging too much and your tenants will move. No. It forces up area average rents, and area average rents set rents. And people will say, well, then people just can't afford it. No. Your people who need a 4-bedroom will live in a 3-bedroom. The people who can will have roommates. People will live with their parents longer. The solution is never rent stall. Area average rents set rents. Rent control forces rents up. Thank you very much for the profit. I'll take it because I'm human, but it sucks because I'm also human and I feel for the people that I was most of my life. As a renter, I probably thought rent control would be great. They can't raise my rent a bunch. But now they had to raise it every year. And most times when I was renting, I had an increase every other year or every 3 years. That's why I designed my system the way I did. That has now tied my hands behind my back and made me make more money. If you want your questions answering to our live, I will see you on Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific, and I will answer all of your questions and your comments, even the haters that hate landlords who make more money because of stupid laws.